Tonight, two American celebrations, the second of the nation's first African-American president as we look at live pictures in Washington. And we also celebrate the civil rights leader whose struggles helped make that inauguration in many ways possible. Plus, extended sound from both men, the president and Dr. Martin Luther King. But first, let's take you to Washington, D.C., where we get the live report from our ABC correspondent.
Good evening from the National Mall. President Obama was much more optimistic than he was in 2009. He indicated today that the next 4 years will be defined by a younger, more progressive, more diverse nation. And he also sounded like a politician who's not running for re-election. On a perfect, crisp winter day, President Obama signaled a new season in America.
My fellow Americans, we are made for this moment, and we will seize it so long as we seize it together.
During his 18-minute inaugural address, President Obama outlined a vision for his second term and kept returning to some key themes.
We, the people, our journey, our time.
It was a call to action, President Obama making it clear that he looks at the next 4 years as an opportunity to seize a moment together with the American people. And while he said that must be done as one nation, one people, the agenda he outlined is clearly aimed at progressives. Climate change, gun control, immigration reform, and protecting Medicare and Social Security.
They do not make us a nation of takers.
And in an inaugural address first, a nod to gay rights.
Our journey is not complete until our gay brothers and sisters are treated like anyone else under the law.
Officials estimated up to 800,000 people packed the National Mall to see President Obama's ceremonial swearing in. Not quite the magnitude of 2009, about 1 million fewer people. But for many, the moment was still powerfully significant and poignant.
I never ever thought I would see one inauguration of a black man, but now I've seen two.
And while the second inauguration doesn't pack the same punch as the swearing in of a new president, there was still some megawatt star power. Let freedom ring. In the traditional parade up Pennsylvania Avenue back to the White House. And it is a big night on the town for President Obama and the First Lady. They'll head up the two official inaugural balls, which are expected to draw about 40,000 people. Reporting live from Washington, Karen Travers, ABC News. Now back to you.
Thank you very much, Karen. Now, the president hitting on a number of themes that we'll be talking about over the next 60 minutes in this special RFL inaugural panel this evening. And joining us here, four of our very good friends. Richard Brodsky, former New York Assemblyman, senior fellow at Demos, and professor at NYU officially in the Fourth Estate. Dominic Carter, a political journalist and author. And Chris Shays, former Republican congressman from Connecticut, and we're trying to drag him into our private hell here. And our senior political correspondent, Andrew Whitman. And our first focus from the president's second inaugural address is change. Now, the president, he turned to history for lessons about our nation's growth and development. He then linked to the challenges facing the U.S. here in 2013. And take a listen.
We have always understood that when times change, so must we. That fidelity to our founding principles requires new responses to new challenges. That preserving our individual freedoms ultimately requires collective action. For the American people can no more meet the demands of today's world by acting alone than American soldiers could have met the forces of fascism or communism with muskets and militias. No single person can train all the math and science teachers we'll need to equip our children for the future, or build the roads and networks and research labs that will bring new jobs and businesses to our shores. Now, more than ever, we must do these things together as one nation and one people.
All right, just a snapshot. We'll have more moments from today. But let me bring in our panel, and Congressman, let me start with you. Some people said too much policy, not enough pros. Progressives said this is the Obama we've been waiting to hear for 4 years. What was your take from today?
Well, first off, I just marvel at the transfer of power, the affirmation of power. So
it's a great day.
Oh,
Isn't it every day, regardless of
day.
the Republican, Democrat? Yeah. I talked about with our panel today, God, were the Founding Fathers smart. Not that they put together the inauguration and stuff, but for all the faults and the warts of Washington, it's really an amazing, moving thing, isn't it?
Give Americans credit for the fact they accept this concept, and we live it every 4 years. So my reaction was, I want to celebrate today. I would look forward to his really reaching out. I didn't hear him asking for people to kind of make any sacrifice. I mean, we have a huge debt. This generation is screwing the generations to come. And it was kind of like we glossed over that.
Yeah. And Andrew, some of the criticisms that came from the right side of the aisle was it sounded like they said a campaign speech that didn't talk about a lot of conciliatory reach across the aisle. But it sounded like a campaign address. What was your take?
I thought it was an uplifting speech. I thought it was a speech that reinforced his view of government as an agent for good and for the positives that it can do. I think it was maybe a tad more political than some other inaugural addresses that we've seen, but I thought it hit all the right notes, and I actually thought it sort of had I said before, either a Capra-esque or the modern equivalent, a Sorkin-esque quality to it. An uplifting, trying to catch that spirit of the day that the congressman was talking about earlier.
Sorkin-esque. What the
Well,
hell is
that means Andrew wants to live in a world where we have the West Wing in the real world. Dom, I got the sense this was a guy who was much more comfortable in his skin than he was 4 years ago on the same stage. There was more of an optimism to him. Remember, 4 years ago, he was like, what have I walked into here? You know, we're talking either recession or depression. It's one or the other.
I wasn't impressed with his speech.
I got 2 wars going on at the same time.
Right.
I inherited a hot mess. You got the idea that he believes better days are ahead. You didn't get that 4 years ago.
I agree with you 1,000%. The president sounding a note today, yes, I said 1,000%. The president sounding a note of, from my perspective of, I got the impression, Congressman, that he's of bipartisanship, and that yes, the country is on the road, the right road. He didn't, not necessarily expressing how close it is to recovery, but along the path, that the wars are over, that now it's time to hopefully invest in America, but it's going to take a united Congress to do so.
And it also seemed to me, Richard, that this was somebody who knows historically that in the second term, the president's got 12, 18 months if he's lucky to get stuff through before either external affairs, scandal, international events. He becomes a lame duck president.
He's a man with a plan. There's no doubt about that. I thought the thing that's going to stay with people about the speech are the visuals, not the content. This speech will disappear into the ether.
When you say the visuals, you mean who was on the stage and who
No,
spoke?
the troops marching by and the people in the stands and the people waving and what she was wearing.
See, for me, I took something different from it. And obviously I did this 10 hours today, so maybe I'm thinking too much about her, I'm getting punchy, but it's Martin Luther King Day. And 4 years ago, it was, wow, this is history, we're watching. 2 million people showed up, half this time. But look at what he spoke about. There was a poet that was gay. There was a Latina.
It's going to disappear into the ether.
He talked about gay rights for me as if it was a given.
Look,
and 4 years ago, we were talking about, look at where we've come with race relations. I just stood back and said, my God, he's right. Look at how much changed so fast in this country.
I like the speech. I'm not knocking it. I'm simply saying it's going to have no substance, and it's not going to do much for the debate and the decisions have to be done. The Republican leadership got smart. They didn't get nasty and grumpy. No one yelled out liar. Nothing dramatically crazy happened, which I thought was smart on their part. And I think everyone's waiting for this to be over, and then starting tomorrow, let's get on with it. And I think that was the part, that's what I thought the significant was, how little significance it has.
Not to put too much into it, but they said it's Axelrod's in Chicago now. You got Pluff in D.C. They seem to have spent a lot of time with historians in the last few weeks where they really get a gauge of predecessors, what worked, what didn't for folks. He's the 16th president who's going to have a second term. And there are some pitfalls to try and avoid, but most of all, don't mess around with the time you got here, because you got a limited amount of time, and he's got an ambitious agenda.
So the key is going to be how well he reaches out to the Speaker and the Senators on both sides of the aisle. He's got to be a little more involved. You know, last time he said, you write the health care bill, I'll sign something.
He hinted a little bit that he might be, right? Don't you think?
Yeah, but, you know, I would have loved for him to just acknowledge, you know, that that we have a speaker and say something nice about him, but maybe you don't do that in
He
an inaugural
did
address.
that at the congressional.
At the lunch today
Luncheon,
also,
you know,
he said
yeah.
And he did it quite nicely.
Yeah.
That's it.
Look,
First
that-
Lady and
well, then
John Boehner agree,
done,
I'm going
done.
to
That's
lunch.
where
Yeah.
he should do it.
And he did it. He did it nicely. He knows how to do this.
Yeah.
He's relaxed. He knows. He learned how to be president over the last 4 years, and he did it very well. I just think that what matters is well beyond the ability of a speech to deal with. The fights are going to be real. The question for the Republican Party is, do they surrender to their crazies, or do they become a governing
I agree with
body?
you, but I also think there's an
Democrats
opportunity.
not have crazies? I mean, give me a
But
break.
yeah, but we don't surrender to
Oh,
them.
we got crazy. No, but I got a question though, and we'll get into this in a second. But I also think there's an opportunity if the president's willing to help out Republicans, like on immigration and stuff, and let them get a little ahead of stuff, he can get a lot in return. We'll talk about some tactics in a second. But the inauguration, as Richard said, it's not just about the policy, whatever. It's a big party, and it's a giant parade. And we've had our team on the ground as well. Kim Wallace is there, and she joins us now live. And Kim, you got to speak to some of the people who came from all over this country to be there today, 1 million probably all told, if the estimates are right, and they braved some pretty cold weather, didn't they?
It was pretty cold today, and let me tell you, people were here since early this morning along Pennsylvania Avenue here, but they definitely did not seem to mind. We're right near 12th Street, about midway through the 57th inaugural parade route, and it's still going. Behind me, you can see people are still here. There's cheering and waving of the flags. The crowd, the excitement is really just contagious. Of course, not as many people as you said compared to in 2009, but that has not stopped people from having some fun and celebrating today. Now, I talked to people earlier who told me why it was so important for them to be here today and be a part of history.
But this is different because it's a historic day. It's one of the greatest days of the year. And I brought my son Harrison down here so I could tell him when he grows up that he went to an inauguration as a young child.
But because I wasn't able to come 4 years ago, so I wanted to make sure I was here today.
And you made it this year, another historic event 4 years
really
later.
Excited about it.
Really excited. I think we're all excited. And Evan, you listened to the speech 4 years ago, and you also heard it today. What did you think about what the president had to say?
Well, first off, Obama's a great speaker, and to be there and to be here with the energy in the crowd, I really felt it, and I felt like I was a part of something. I was just ready to, 4 more years, I was ready. So go Obama.
Well, it feels real good. It's a good opportunity, and it's a blessing. It really is, yes.
Of course, many people from all over the country gathering in Washington, D.C. today. Among them is Doris from Alabama. You lived through segregation. What does it mean to you to see an African-American president be voted in for the second time?
I mean, it's just an awesome experience to see this come to fruition, to know that I did live through segregation, having to eat a hamburger from a window and walk down the street rather than being able to go in and sit down and eat it. And of course, Martin Luther King, having been with him during the marches and participated in the Montgomery to Selma March, it was just, it's just awesome. And I thank God that I've lived to see it and could walk around and participate.
Absolutely, of course, celebrating MLK Jr.'s day today as well. Did you ever think you would see the day where we would be celebrating him and an African-American president?
Of course, that was the American dream, and of course, we were always taught that anything was possible in America. And so with God and with help of people that he used, of course, it was a possibility. And of course, Martin Luther King even said that in about 25 years, and of course, it did come true.
It came to fruition, absolutely. And we're here to witness it for the second time today.
Yes.
Well, Doris, thank you so much. Have a safe trip home. A lot of people heading out now. Now, I just want to read a quote that the president said in his speech earlier today that really summarizes the overriding theme today. He said, "My fellow Americans, we are made for this moment, and we will seize it as long as we seize it together." I think that pretty much says it all. We're live from Washington, D.C. Kimberly Wallace. Rich?
Well, thank you very much, Kimberly. And just a note that lady who joined Kim, who came all the way from Alabama. Always amazed at people who travel such long distances to brave the cold. Good for them. We're going to be playing Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech in its entirety at the end of this hour, like we do every MLK Day. Okay, we're going to jump to break. As we go out to break, we leave you some live pictures of the parade still ongoing right now as they make their way down Pennsylvania Avenue in the viewing area where the First Family as well as other members of the administration are. We'll be right back, everyone, and we'll discuss not just today, but the next 4 years. Please stay with us.